Board of County Commissioners. This is our regular
Chair
meeting.
Chair-
I'm
Chair
sorry,
Farr,
Diana, 30-second warning.
thank you. I'll start the webinar now. One moment.
Thank you. I was practicing. How'd I do?
You did really well.
Great.
And I'll try and do it again. Good
There
morning.
you go.
Welcome to Harris Hall. Today is November 29th. This is a regular meeting of the Board of County Commissioners. As you look around me, you'll see there are 3 county commissioners at the dais today. Commissioner Bozovich is with us remote from his home office, and Commissioner Burney will be excused absent today. So we'll be operating as a board of 4 county commissioners. Mr. Mokrahysky, good morning.
Good morning.
Do we have any adjustments to the agenda?
We don't.
Excellent. And I'm not accustomed to talking in a mic through the mask, so please let me know if I need to enunciate more clearly. I always do, but even more so today. So
Can hear you great.
thank you.
Chair,
Commissioner Bozovich.
I did request to pull item 5A 3 from the consent calendar.
And I had made a note of that. It does show up on our regular consent calendar. So item 5A3 without objection will be pulled from the consent calendar. And Commissioner Bozovich, Commissioner Burney, in his excused absence today, has asked if any items pulled from consent calendar, if we could delay a vote until next week. Do you have a problem with that?
Not at all.
Okay, and I'll look to staff. That is a vote on the Charter Review Committee appointment. So making certain that we have no issues surrounding delaying that vote until a week, until our December 6th meeting. Thank you. So the consent calendar will be without item 5A3 for anybody watching online. Okay, any further adjustments to the agenda? I'm seeing none. Mr. Mokrahysky, do we have any emergency business today?
No.
Very well. So we'll move directly into public comments. We take public comments both in person in Harris Hall and virtually online. We take comments from the people in Harris Hall first, which will be followed by a queue managed by Ms. Jones of anyone who may be signed up online. You'll have 3 minutes to talk. There'll be no warning ahead of time other than the clock will be on the wall up there showing the 3 minutes as it counts down. So keep an eye on that and try to time your testimony to the 3 minutes on the clock. We have 2 people signed up in Harris Hall today. The first is Richard Locke, who will be followed by David Eigel, excuse me. And before you step to the, please step to the mic, Mr. Locke, and I'll call on you in just a second. If you do have written testimony, please provide that ahead of time. Prior to any written testimony provided today, we'll be going to next week's public comment. So, Mr. Locke, if you will step to the mic, identify yourself, and you will have 3 minutes.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name's Richard Locke. I'm a Ward 8 business owner, and I'm the president of the Eugene Business. I came here last month, and we talked a bit about the utilization of our homeless shelters throughout the system. Your reports I always find very interesting because they're very well kept and updated. I would like to say before I talk about the negative side, there was the permanent side of the housing situation seems to be rising, and the utilization is very good at that. It's the more transitional beds and the emergency shelters and stuff that are still far underutilized as far as I'm concerned. We should be finding places for these folks to stay. I was actually downtown Eugene last night and noticed that there was a multitude of people that were just moving from inside the library to outside the library to camp overnight, and on every street corner in Eugene. They seem to be in good spirits, other than they don't have any place to go. I'm sure that if there was some place they would. But just to recap that, I see that we've increased the numbers, but we don't seem to increase the percentage. So the transitional beds is about 33% underutilized. The rehousing units is about 40% underutilized. The average, the drop-in shelter beds, it runs about, well, anywhere from about 28 to 18% underutilized, depending on what you're looking at. There has been increases in the total numbers, but the numbers themselves don't get any better as far as utilization goes. So I would like to say that I'm not sure exactly how we combat this or emphasize to the service providers that this needs to be, they should maybe change the way they conduct business and allow more people. We need to get people off the street. I mean, it seems kind of inhumane that we have all these beds open every night and we still have people sleeping under tarps and in doorways and different things like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Locke. David Eigel is the last person signed up in Harris Hall.
Good morning. I wish to focus your attention on the sad situation at the Lane County History Museum. Jennifer Ye is one of the managers of the museum. Most of the funding for the museum is provided by Lane County. The Oregon Black Pioneers exhibit at the museum is full of misinformation that deceives the public as to our heritage. The exhibit serves primarily to smear the reputation of the white Protestant residents of a century ago. Although I'm a member of the Lane County Historical Society, I was improperly removed from the 2022 annual meeting held over Zoom because during the Q&A period, I properly raised my well-documented concern over the misrepresentation of the life of Professor Dunn. The society membership has not been informed of the misinformation being distributed, nor of the misconduct of the management or the president of the board. My subsequent complaints to the museum over the many gross and vile misrepresentations contained in the exhibit were directed to the museum's historian. After months of delay, the historian was unable to challenge any of my points, but announced that she would make no changes to the exhibit. It was then that I returned to the public forums with my objections. Ms. Ye has emailed me objecting to my exposure of her misconduct in public forums. Apparently, she doesn't understand that it's quite proper for a citizen to expose any misconduct by a public official. She and the board president have tried to prevent or limit my communication with museum employees or other members of the board by falsely asserting that this would constitute harassment. As a born and raised Eugenian, I'm appalled by the non-residents, such as Ms. Ye, who moved here and then go about spreading lies about our community. I furnished the commissioners with numerous documented examples of this abuse of trust and the misuse of public funds. I have many more, if you would like, that I can provide you. I call upon the members of the commission, both individually and collectively, to take action to ensure that the historical record is set straight. The private, racist, and religious bigotry of Jennifer Ye and her ilk should not be funded with public monies. You have an obligation to help clean up this mess. I hope you will do so. I will be available individually or collectively to answer any questions you have or to give a tour of the museum. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Eigel. Mr. Eigel is the last person signed up in Harris Hall. I'll look to Ms. Jones to manage on online queue. Mrs. Jones, do we have anyone signed up online?
Thank you, Chair Barr. I do see some people signed up. At this time, if you have registered to give comments during public comment for this meeting, please raise your virtual hand and I will call upon you in the order that the hands are raised. Please note at the 3-minute mark, you will be muted. So please pay attention to the timer. Our first speaker will be Megan Gerber, followed by David Eisler. Megan, I will unmute your microphone and you may begin. Oh, Megan, your hand just went down. I'm assuming you still would like to speak. Okay. I will unmute your microphone and you can begin your public comment. Megan, you are self-muted. There you go. Megan, you are live. You seem to have lost Megan. I can still see you there, but it looks like you dropped the call or something. So I will go to David Eisler and try to go back to Megan following this testimony. David, I will unmute your microphone and you may begin your testimony. You are self-muted. There you go.
Yes, good morning. My name is David Eisler. I live in Walton, Oregon. Thanks for the opportunity to comment on the Lane County Community Resilience Plan today. I've owned and managed forest land in the Coast Range, and I've been involved in forest and watershed restoration for more than 30 years. I'm currently a member of the Lane County's Climate Advisory Committee. As a forest land owner in rural Lane County, I would like to speak to the forest issues that affect so many of us. I would point out that Lane County has the largest acreage of forested land in the state. So Lane County has the potential to mitigate or reduce the climate change impacts, not only to the rural communities, but to all the county's residents who suffer health impacts from wildfire smoke. It's a certainty that programs for thinning forest stands and reducing understory fuels work. Additionally, training for workers and assistance to small businesses to do the work has the potential to provide a needed economic boost to rural residents and communities. Of importance to the feasibility of Lane County's commitment and engagement in forest climate programs is that there are agencies and organizations that have federal and state funding that have identified these same goals. What is critical is that the county network with these agencies to assure that funding comes to Lane County and that a collaborative effort will have greater chances of on-the-ground success. The Forestry Subcommittee of the Lane County Climate Advisory Committee, in a set of recommendations approved by the full committee and sent to the Board of Commissioners, advised that the hiring or contracting of a coordinator to network with the various agencies and organizations and to write grants would be extremely important. Beyond Toxics additionally has organized discussions with a number of family forest businesses to identify strategies and needs to facilitate climate change opportunities for forest land owners and associated businesses. These strategies, the strategies addressed in the Lane County Community Resilience Plan, and those that have come out of the Climate Advisory Committee provide strong guidelines for Lane County. So I would like to offer my hopes that the Community Resilience Plan will be favorably looked upon by the Lane County Board of Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to bring climate change forestry issues to your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Eisler.
Thank you for your public comment. Mr. Eisler is the last hand I have raised. I will go back to Megan and see if we can get Megan on. Megan, it looks like you're there. If you'd still like to speak, if you can unmute your microphone, we can try to get your public comment in. I'm not seeing that you're able to get your microphone unmuted. I do not have any other hands raised. I do see a few other people on. Noah Landgard. Noah, if you would like to, if you would like to speak, I will unmute your microphone and you may begin your public comment. You are self-muted, Noah. There you go. Noah, your has started. There you go. Noah, we aren't hearing you.
Good morning, County Commissioners. My name is Noah Langard. I am a sophomore in high school and a resident of Florence, Oregon.
Affirmative.
Can you hear me right now?
Yes.
All right. All right. Good morning, County Commissioners. My name is Noah Langard. I am a sophomore in high school and a resident of Florence, Oregon. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to give you my testimony. I would like to show my gratitude for the work you have done on the Lane County Climate Action Plan. I care about reducing climate change because that would result in a more stable environment for future generations like myself. Earth is the only home we have and we should treat it as such. Humans, animals, plants, and all sorts of living things rely on each other and the planet in order to survive. Climate change is affecting our coastal communities with rising sea levels, which endangers the people and animals. There are a lot of us in Florence who are concerned about the rising sea levels and for the safety of our homes and our communities, not to mention the past wildfires, which impacted many people, some losing their homes and others developing health issues. Another example of a serious effect of climate change is the thicker atmosphere caused by burning fossil fuels. There are only some of the dangerous issues that we will all have to face if we don't take immediate action. By adopting the Lane County's Community Climate Resilience Plan, you can bring the community one step forward and would be helping everyone in Lane County in our fight against climate change. You would also be ensuring that we stay healthy and safe. So please vote yes to the Lane County Community Climate Resilience Plan, not just for future generations, but for our planet and everyone on it. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Landgard.
Thank you for your public comment. At this time, I do not have any other hands raised for public comment. Megan Gerber did, I believe Megan, Megan Gerber did send me an email saying that she has submitted her public comments yesterday in writing, so you should have all received those yesterday, and if you would review those, she would appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Jones.
Yes, at this time, I do not have any other public comments. Thanks.
Thank you. Then I'll look back to Harris Hall. Or is there anyone else in Harris Hall who wishes to address the Board of County Commissioners in public testimony? I see no one. Then I will close the public testimony and move along down the calendar. Commissioners, we have before us a consent calendar. You know, no remonstrances. Thank you. So let us skip the consent calendar for the time being, go back to remonstrances and or other items from the Board of County Commissioners. Do we have any remonstrances? Commissioner Buck.
Thank you, Chair. I want to speak to Mr. Locke's comments specifically because housing is one of my favorite topics, of course. We have had in the past a presentation from our Human Services staff on this topic. It's been some time, but utilization rates were specifically part of the presentation. And I believe Kate Budd, who works there in the Human Services Department, was the one presenting at that time. And if you haven't had a chance to reach out to her, I would highly suggest that because I think that there's some really good information in that presentation that she might be able to share with you. And if I remember right, there are definitely concerns about utilization rates not being as high as we want them to be. And there was some systematic changes that they were going to be reviewing and implementing to help assist getting those up. And I don't know how far into the implementation that's happened, but it is, your questions pique my curiosity too. So I'll probably check in with her as well. But if you haven't had a chance, I just wanted to refer her to you. Kate Budd.
Thank you. Vice Chair Trieger.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Piggybacking off of what my colleague Commissioner Buck just mentioned, additionally, this board has regular updates from Kate Budd and her colleagues in our housing office. And I believe another one is scheduled for one of our later January meetings. So flagging for you, Mr. Locke, those are regular presentations that we get on updates of progress toward addressing homelessness and housing insecurity in the community. And we get terrific. Those are very meaty reports. We usually allocate about 90 minutes to that item, so we really dig in. So if you look at our agendas as they come out in January, I think it's the 24th or whatever the week that's close to that date in the new year is the next time Kate Budd and her colleagues will be reporting on that issue to us. I also just want to acknowledge, since we didn't meet prior to November 20th was two significant, November 20th was two significant days. It was Trans Day of Remembrance, which is something that happens every year where we acknowledge the lives lost and the particular vulnerabilities of transgendered folks in our community. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that that was an important day, that our meeting calendar just didn't fall in a way to make an acknowledgement in advance of that day. We have a really phenomenal organization we're really fortunate to have in this community called Transponder, and they put on an annual event each year marking that important date. That day was also World Day of Remembrance for victims of road traffic accidents. And this community in particular lost a active transportation advocate who worked for the city of Eugene's transportation planning and was having adventures. Her name was Larissa or Isa Varela, and she was traveling all over the country and then went to Mexico and was hit by a car and suffered injuries that she was not able to recover from, and sadly died from those injuries. And it's just such a reminder that these things really hit very close to home at times. And I know we here in Lane County have had a spike in serious roadway accidents, particularly, but not exclusively on county roads. So I just want to flag for anyone watching to please be careful. We're heading, we've more hours of darkness, foggy mornings, icy roads. And I think still it's sort of a post-pandemic phenomenon. People have sort of forgotten how to drive safely, and we drive distracted, and time management, we might be running late, but please be a few minutes late for your meeting, but get there safely and make sure other folks on the road do too. And with that, I also just want to give a special acknowledgement and appreciation to our deputies in the sheriff's office who respond to these accidents and are faced with really devastating, tragic scenes often. So appreciating their work very much. And thank you to the folks in our Public Works Division for doing what they can to keep the roadways safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Trieger. Commissioner Bozievich.
Thank you, Chair. So I believe most of the staff and the Board of Commissioners are aware of this, but I just want to make sure the public knows that unfortunately, due to how real estate works, our original settlement date for the sale of our home of December 29th was moved up to next week on the 6th of December. So that will be my last board meeting. My last official day as a commissioner will be December 8th, because I will be leaving the state and the district on December 9th. Just wanted to let the public know and make them aware of that. It's unfortunate that I have to miss the last board meeting of the year and didn't get to finish out my full term, but I will be resigning my position as commissioner effective end of business December 8th, 2022.
Thank you for that announcement, Commissioner Bozievich. We will take further action on that next week as we approach that date. And thank you for your 12 years minus 3 weeks of service, ultimately. Very good. Then just one very quick thing from me, and it's not very often that we have an opportunity to thank somebody in public for work that they do in private, and also that is in coordination with public work. But I'd like to point out Rich Locke, who provided testimony to us this morning. Rich has a business which is at the intersection basically of Atlantic and Pacific Avenues. Not Cape Horn, but actually in West Eugene. So what's significant about that is that it's an area that's been designated by the city as a place for legal and organized camping. It also flows over into county land. So for the last greater than a year, Mr. Locke has been talking to both me and to his city council, which is Randy Groves, about coordination of efforts between the county and the city, and between and adding private industry to that. I'd like to thank you for that effort, Mr. Locke. You, Mr. Locke, came on a jail tour, had an opportunity to understand how the jail operates and the behavioral health issues surrounding the operation of the jail, as well as other issues. And significantly, Mr. Locke, you've opened your front gates to allow a certain number of formerly homeless people who that they're still homeless, but they're staying inside of the perimeter of your gates in a safe and secure situation. Thank you for all of the work that you do. We all look forward to working with you as we provide more answers down the road. Thank you, Mr. Lott. Anything else in the remonstrances? Then at this point, we will move forward to item 5, which is our consent calendar. Commissioners, we do have before us a consent calendar. Anyone watching online can click on items on our agenda to view the entire agenda packet that the Board of County Commissioners has considered before moving these consent calendar items. I will note that item 5A3 has been pulled for consideration next week. So do I have a motion? Vice Chair Krieger.
Chair Farr, I'll move approval of the consent calendar minus the aforementioned item for Tuesday, November 29th, 2022.
Second.
Moved by Vice Chair Krieger and seconded by Commissioner Buck. We have our consent calendar. Is there discussion to the motion? I'm seeing none. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Passes 4-0 with Commissioner Burney excused absent. And we will move down our calendar to item 6A is a 10 o'clock time certain. We're a little bit ahead of our time certain, Mr. Mokrasi. So with the consent of the board, we'll move down the agenda a little bit further and cover some later items that are scheduled later in the agenda. Beginning with County Council, I've spoken with Mr. Dingle this morning, and there are no announcements from County Council this morning. So we'll go to item 8, excuse me. Mr. Mokrasi, are you prepared with the item 8A, the report back on a review of legal analysis regarding the renaming of Lane County?
What I'd asked Chair, I asked Devin Ashbridge to come down and present on that item. She's not here yet. So I'm happy to do announcements. I have a quick update on elections. I think this may be the last update on elections, maybe one more next week. And then as Devin's making her way down here, then we can go to 8A if that works for you.
Perfect. Thank you.
So today is the deadline to cure a ballot if a signature was missing or discrepant. There's still about 2,500 challenged ballots that have not been cured. So we encourage anyone who's not cured their ballot to contact elections and make their way to the elections office today to rectify that. The election team has been busy tallying write-in votes, adjudicating ballots to determine voter intent, and resolving challenged ballots. Tomorrow, the election team will pull together all remaining ballots that can be processed and prepare them for counting. This Wednesday, ballots will be counted and unofficial results will be published to the web. Between Wednesday and next Monday, the election team will finish processing any outstanding ballots, conduct a final logic and accuracy test, and certify the election. The final official election results will be published no later than 5 p.m. Monday, December 5th. At the last count, 183,782 ballots had been cast and counted. 183,782 ballots have been cast and counted. Live streaming has been available 24/7 in the weeks prior to the election and since the election, and will remain available through the deadline to contest the election, which is December 19th, 2022. The final public logic and accuracy test. If you recall, we do several of these tests to the system prior to the election and then one post-election. To make sure that the system, the machines are counting ballots accurately. That final public logic and accuracy test is scheduled for Monday, December 5th at 10 p.m. One representative from each party and one representative for each nonpartisan candidate may observe in person. And finally, the administrative hand count is tentatively scheduled for Wednesday, December 7th at 10 a.m. This process is open to in-person observation as well. So that is last or second to last update on the election.
Any questions regarding that update? I have a quick question, Mr. Marker. I see one person from each party. That's all of the parties?
It is the parties that were represented in the election. Let me just see. Sorry, I just lost my notes here. How's that possible?
That's okay. You don't need to follow through on that.
It is one representative from each party and one representative for each nonpartisan candidate may observe in person. That's what's allowed.
Okay. We'll presume that each party means each party that's wishing to participate. Or does it have to be a party that has a name on the ballot or an issue on the ballot?
I believe it's any formally established and recognized party,
Thank you very much, Mr. Montefiore.
but I can check on that and get back to you.
That you do not need to. That's sufficient for my question. Thank you. Please continue.
Okay, that was it. Unless you have questions for me or about the election. And if not, then we can move to item 8A. This is an update. It says review of legal analysis. We've asked for legal analysis and of course the board, we had a board assignment regarding the renaming of Lane County. I asked Devin Ashbridge, our public information officer, to be with us today. Devin has spent a significant amount of time over the course of the last year plus, I'd say, on this item. So this is a report back just to update the board on that effort. Devin.
Howdy, Ms. Ashbridge.
Good morning. This is an analysis I worked with Mr. Cheney and County Counsel on. So there was legal review and legal representation in working through this. So I believe the question was, what are the legalities regarding the possible renaming or rededication of Lane County? So the power to rename Lane County is held solely by county voters. The Oregon revised statutes discuss the process for combining existing counties, creating new counties, but it does not specifically address renaming an existing county. However, as a home rule county, Lane County claims the right to name itself. And that is in our home rule charter, chapter 1, section 1. It states the name of the county as it operates under this charter shall continue to be Lane County. Changes to the charter must be approved by Lane County voters. The charter cannot be changed without a vote of the electorate. So according to our charter, any name change must be approved by Lane County voters. And of course, there are multiple ways to put something before voters. The board can choose through a majority vote to place a question on a ballot. It can also be brought to the ballot through the collection of signatures by a community group or interested party. The power to rededicate Lane County, and for the purposes of this discussion, rededicate means to formally renounce General Joseph Lane as the namesake of the county and either select a different Lane or no Lane at all to represent the name of our county. And that can be exercised by the Board of Commissioners or Lane County voters. So rededication is not limited in Oregon revised statutes, nor is it limited in the Lane County Charter. So it's not something that happens commonly, but the board could vote to rededicate the county, or the board could vote to place the question of rededication on a ballot for voters to decide. There's a lot more flexibility there.
Thank you, Ms. Ashbridge. Does that raise any questions on the board? Commissioner Buck.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of questions on this subject. And you may not have gotten to these because the specific question for you to come back to us was legal analysis. Has this gone through our equity team before it was placed here before us yet?
Chair Farr, Commissioner Buck, no, this actually is information that was collected a little over 2 years ago. And so we didn't have the same format for an equity team. I do recall that in the initial discussion by the Board of County Commissioners, there was desire that should this topic ever proceed further, that we certainly involve our equity staff as well as community groups and underrepresented people in our community, but the topic never proceeded to that degree.
Right, a couple things happened. It kept us otherwise busy. Either the decision or maybe non-decision, depending on what occurs after this discussion about whether we want to rededicate or rename. This is really the public's discussion to have, right? So should we want to proceed further with either one of these, I would hope that we would ensure that our equity team has had a thorough review and input, as well as the NAACP, and most importantly to me, our tribal community, as that specifically is the one that is so affected by the original naming of Joseph Lane to this community, as you've outlined in the attached material. And I don't think we've really been able to really effectively engage our tribal communities in a myriad of ways, but specifically for this, right? I would think before we proceeded in either direction, it would be very important to engage all of these groups and the community at large to see what they want to do. And I understand that we have a choice here as the board that we could probably go forth and rededicate if that's what we so chose to do. But I think that that is premature. And those discussions are primary before any decision by this board is made. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that summary, Commissioner Buck. Vice Trigger, do I see a hand raised? No, I see no further discussion to this item. This is not an action item today. Thank you for presenting this. And with that, the due process with Lane County has been completed on this particular item for the time being.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Margaret.
Thank you.
Then we will move on down the, go back to you, Ms. Marquez. Any further announcements?
I don't have any further announcements, and I think you're going to have to decide how to manage the next 20+ minutes until our time certain at 10 o'clock.
You know what? I have some really nice video of our when our grandson was 2-year-old singing Jungle Love and other Steve Miller favorites. Would you like that? Or shall we recess for a few minutes? I would ask, I see that most of the presenters are gathered. However, we don't have everybody gathered. We do also have an obligation to the public that we said we'd start at 10 o'clock. So some people may have timed their viewing of the materials until 10 o'clock. So I'll ask the board, we prefer a recess at this point in time, or shall we sit here just chit-chatting? Let us recess, and then we will reconvene as the Board of Commissioners in Harris Hall at 5 minutes till 10. Recess. meeting. We will be sit in convened recess for just a moment too longer until our staff is fully in place. I just made that term up, convened recess. These two things are opposites. We'll start our 10 o'clock time certain directly spot on 10 o'clock. And that clock on the wall is today spot on accurate. Well, good morning and welcome to our 10 a.m. time certain. Thank you for those of you online. Thank you for being patient until we waited for the 10 o'clock time certain to begin. We have a panel before us today with Jared Bowser, who is the Associate Planner for City of Springfield, and Christina Bowe, a landscape architect. And can you say your name out loud, please? I'm sorry.
Good morning, Jeff Melkus. I'm a consultant with Barry Dunn, and I'm pleased to be able to talk to you today about the comprehensive plan update.
Then, Steve, can you take a moment to introduce the balance of your panel this morning?
I can do that, Commissioner.
That'd be great.
Jared Bowder with
Jared,
Lane
good.
County, actually.
With Lane County. Thank you,
Yeah,
Jared.
and so with us today is Christina Bowe with Willamette Lane, Kenny Wygant, also with Willamette Lane, and Michael Wargo. And potentially joining us soon will be Eric Adams.
Excellent. And Mr. Mokrahysky will be our chief for the meeting. We got started directly at 10 o'clock, Mr. Mokrahysky, and Mr. Boat has Mr. Boder has introduced the panel already. Mr. Mokrahysky, I'll turn it over to you to continue with the 10 o'clock time certain.
Thank you, Chair. And I think you already got introductions, so you can go ahead and take it away.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Or just a second, actually. So it's agenda items to inform the board of work being done to update Willamette Lane's comprehensive plan. The currently effective plan was adopted in 2012, and Wyman's required by their administrative policies to carry out a major update every 10 years. This morning's presentation will summarize the public input gained by a vast public outreach effort, go over the project's timeline, and look at what next steps are for the project towards updating Willamette Lane's comprehensive plan. And so now I'll turn it over to Michael Wargo to start off the presentation.
Mr. Wargo, before you begin, I'll mention that Commissioner Burney has expressed an apology for not being here today. He really dreadfully wanted to watch this. He may be watching us online and will certainly be watching the rebroadcast of this. Thank you.
And everything that we have and we'll speak about will be available online as well. So first, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Michael Wargo. I am proud to be the Executive Director at Willamette Lane Park and Recreation District. Really want to thank this commission's time today to share with you some really exciting progress updates on our comprehensive plan. This started well before, a year and a half ago, where Willamette Lane went through a accreditation process called CAPRA through the National Recreation and Park Association. I'm very happy to announce that this past September, we were awarded with that accreditation, making us one of about 205 park and rec organizations across the country to earn this accreditation. And that's really important to me, my board, and the staff, is because it really means that we continue to be committed to the community. And part of that was to do a comprehensive plan update, which was first completed back in 2012. They recommend that you do this every 10 years. So 2022, here we are. So really excited to present that through our consultants. And also wanted just to mention that we're really proud to also to lend our continued support to Lane County Parks. We were very happy to see that levy had passed. There's going to be some collaboration between Willamette Lane and your Parks Division Manager, Brent Henry. So really, really happy about the great things happening in Parks and Rec within the county of Lane. So thank you very much. Without further ado, I'll turn it back over to Jeff.
Good morning again. Again, Jeff Melkus, and I work with a company called Barry Dunn, and we've been contracted to take on this project in order to update the comprehensive plan. It is a large scoping project that takes a little more than about a year and a half, and it has to be effective for the district, rooted in engagement with the community. And until we get to that point, the plan needs to continue to evolve. So we'll take you down through some of the process that we started back in January, and we'll also talk to you about some of the preliminary kind of findings that we found. Just to remind you, for the city of Springfield, as executive director said, Willamette Lane is the Parks and Recreation provider. They've got 46 parks, and they're the steward of trails, facilities, natural areas in the city of Springfield. They are nationally recognized as a leader, and what the director said about the accreditation, it's a really big deal. Oops, just a second here. Let me get my things. Again, last time this plan was updated was 2012. It is an update. So we're going in and saying what has changed since 2012, and what does the district then need to do in order to continue a certain level of excellence and to meet the needs of the residents in the city. We realize, as I'll point out with some numbers, the city is becoming older, it's becoming more diverse. Since 2012, they've added an enormous amount of acreage, 850 some acres, primarily of natural area. The plan, when all that is taken into account, will provide a roadmap to move forward. And I keep going backwards on my slides. Okay, project timeline, January through June of 23. We're about halfway done. We went through a planning process, or we are going through a planning process, basically where we gather as much information from the community as possible. We look to confirm that information. We look then to reach out to specific individuals and groups as we learn to continue to gain information and to confirm. We go into what we call our findings and visioning, providing town hall meetings with the community, as we've recently done. Then we sit and we vision. We look and say, what is it that we can do with all of this data in order to really meet the needs of the community? What has the community told us? We look at a draft recommendation. We look at strategies for getting there. And finally, then we present a draft plan for the public to review. And after their review, we move into a final plan. These are some of the items that the plan will include. We did a complete and very thorough, I think, demographic analysis. We look at trends, national and regional. We look at what the facilities and the parks are like. Are they meeting the needs? And we take a special look to see what is the experience from the user's perspective. We focus on trails. We focus on natural area. We kind of unpack the maintenance practices. We unpack the recreation practices, and then pack them back up again with recommendations. So what we're doing is kind of opening and looking under the hood to see what is it that, what are the efficiencies and where are they effective, and where is the community telling us that they need to really focus. We look at funding opportunities, and then we really focus on recommendations moving forward, but those recommendations really need to be implementable. We put a high emphasis on ensuring that the plan is something that the community can see evolve and be implemented. A lot of what we're doing is rooted in diversity, equity, and inclusion. We look at that from pretty much every standpoint that we go. We know the community is, again, becoming more diverse and such, so we really want to pay special attention. We know that you know, different users have different needs, different desires, and we want to kind of pull those out. And so we'll present some of that. As we started to engage the community, we did a number of things in partnership with the district. There were intercept events, there was a survey, there was focus group and stakeholder meetings. At the conclusion of the survey, we realized that we had 3,800 points of touch into the community, where not folks just coming to a meeting, but actually raising their hand and giving us advice or telling us something that was important and that we documented. Then we realized that we really needed to do a little bit more and put some special focus on some specific needs. Did some focus group work with teenagers, with the Latinx community, with the tribal community, with groups of folks that are very dedicated to natural areas, trails, a group of individual advocates for accessibility and inclusion. And as a result, we have packaged all this together and, again, have a considerable data set to work with. When we launched the survey, we mailed surveys to 4,500 homes at random in the community. At the conclusion of the random survey, we opened up what we call an open link opportunity for people in the community. We kept the results separate to protect the integrity of the random statistically valid portion. Ended up with 1,598 survey responses. Some of the things that we've learned in our survey. If you look at, or I'm sorry, not from the survey, but from our demographics work, you can see that from 0 to 4 to 15 to 19-year-olds, they're pretty stable, which means that children in the city of Springfield, the number of children, and thus the number of services they need, whether it be ballparks, youth sports, enrichment activities, opportunities for swimming lessons, etc. The youth in the community going through 2026 isn't changing that much, but they aren't decreasing significantly either, which means to us that the level of service that the district needs to be prepared to provide is pretty, you know, is pretty much staying the same. However, if you look at the far right on this chart, you'll notice that folks up through 2026 are getting older. The proportion of the community members are aging, and as a result, there begs the question: are the services for individuals who are a little more mature or older, are they being met already, and are they going to be able to be met moving forward? We looked at the ethnic background of community members, and we realized that while the community is 82.9, basically 83% white, you can see that Hispanic population is 14.8%. Now, the numbers, just to remind you, people of Hispanic background are not necessarily fit into one of the other boxes, but multiple boxes. And that's why the percentages would add to more than 100. But in terms of Hispanic population, we expect that growth to continue to increase to be somewhere around 17% in the near future. And so what it means is that there are individuals out there that the district really, as that grows, needs to pay attention to and can really focus on meeting needs. We looked at the number of district residents who have disabilities because that's often a responsibility of a parks agency. So what we realize is that the state of Oregon is 14%, but Springfield's 19%. And the best reasoning that we can come up with here is that there are a significant number of services that are offered within and around the geographic area. And I think people may be coming to look for those services. If you look at how they break out, there are a number that are ambulatory, self-care, independent living that speak to seniors. However, a number of residents, almost 1 in 5, that have a disability of sorts is significant, and that is an area that the district can really help to focus their attention to. So we ask folks in SWOT analysis terms, what are the strengths and the areas for improvement. So I'll just show you some of the areas of improvement here. There is a need for better class times when things are being offered, communication with people who don't already use district opportunities, volunteer, and you can see the lists that are down through there. There's one near the end, it says more pool access. And just to remind you, during the pandemic, there were some sporadic closures of some of the swimming opportunities, and that had to do with staffing and the such. So we asked the community during our engagement, what kind of additional recreation activities do you want? What do you want to do? And what we realize is that there is a real need for activities. There's a gap in service for people who are 18 or 21 up through about 50. And then, of course, the older population follows closely behind. People want more pickleball instruction. And if you've heard of pickleball, it's growing, and you'll always see pickleball. I've never heard of it. Okay, well, that's good. We can explain a little more. Now, disc golf as well, more swim lessons, enrichment classes, more special events, particularly cultural events. We ask folks, what is it that might limit your participation? Why wouldn't you come to your parks? Why don't you use parks or some of these great facilities? Being able to walk through the city of Springfield to get to some of the parks, there are some barriers, and I'll point out some of that to you in a few moments. Limited district outreach really to non-users. There's a lot of outreach, but again, that comes from from other engagement as well. Accessibility. So we asked people again, what are the reasons for non-use? We did this in the survey just to see if the engagement was correct. And lack of time is not something that the district really can control, but not aware of programs that are offered and not aware of facilities being available are two that kind of bubbled up to the top. And what we know from other survey research is that people that use the district facilities and programs are very aware. So really it's getting to those folks that are not users. So then we ask folks about how welcome do you feel in your parks and your facilities in the survey. We wanted to know, are people feeling good about their experiences? Well, as it turns out, on a scale of 1 to 5, residents of Willamette Lane feel very, very welcome in their facilities. They're in their parks. That's it gives you a sense of their service level, of their customer service at the frontline area, of the maintenance of the parks. It kind of wraps up a whole bunch of things. One of the areas that is really exciting to me, and again, this is one point of data. It doesn't necessarily represent everybody, say in the Latinx community or Hispanic community, but folks in the survey on a scale of 1 to 5 said 4.3, they feel welcome. And so to me, that's really an important finding so far in the study. So we asked folks about importance of facilities and services. It says, what's really important to you? And we asked folks to check boxes on the survey. And there was a whole myriad of opportunity, and we asked them to check, what are the 10 most important, and rate those from 1 not important to 5 very important. So of the responses that said, hey, these are important to me, park safety and maintenance, natural areas, and trails in the trail system were really most important. You can see up there as well, restrooms in parks. are right up there in the top. In doing this kind of survey research around the state of Oregon and around the country, I can tell you that they aren't that different. Restrooms and trails tends to bubble up to the top for park users. Top 3 future priorities, we then said, we're going to make it harder on you as far as a survey respondent. Now you need to tell us just what are your top 3. And so what we ended up with, again, trails and bike paths, park safety and maintenance, and an outdoor swimming pool showed up when we asked folks, okay, now you can't say what your top 10 are, you just have to say your top 3. So again, it's 2 ways of essentially trying to get to the same data point. Given that trails, when folks rated their top 3 was the top area, we also had a question, what are the top 3 priorities for improvement of your trail system? And so we know that there are a lot of really nice hiking opportunities in and around the Eugene-Springfield area. There's some buttes that are beautiful, and in a lot of ways, they're kind of loved to death. They're very, very well used and have been for a long time. But folks are telling us more soft service hiking trails, especially in scenic areas, are really important. The connection between those trails and other opportunities are important, and accessible walking trails, meaning somewhat level, paved, often loop paths in parks, things like that. So one of the areas we were really excited about in the survey was that not only did we get almost 1,600 responses, but we received 600 comments from those respondents. They felt passionate enough to take the time to write out comments in the open-ended sections of the survey, which were really, it's really an exciting thing. In a random order, but most repeated, people are telling us, okay, we wish you would have asked us more perhaps, but we want an outdoor pool, greater access to swimming lessons, restrooms, parks and facilities closer to my neighborhood, security for parks. You can see that some of this comes through from the engagement in the other parts of the survey as well. We also heard some other feedback. The list on the left are really needs people told us about. The general feedback on the right, we heard an awful lot about, what a great job the district does meeting our needs. There were some concerns about, facilities, lots of people using facilities. We saw comments about the adult activity center, where if you don't sign up quickly, you might not have a space to sign up in, just because of the quality and the use. So I'm going to pivot now over to our evaluation of the parks, so you can kind of get a feel for what we did. We did some things that are a little unique in terms of how we approached evaluation of the parks. Rather than just use measures of how many acres do you have and how far are you, we went under the hood a little further to say, what is that experience? We went into each park facility and we looked at every single component and everything that was in that park that you could do and rated them on their effect to the neighborhood and their effect to the community overall. So they were rated as a 1, 2, or 3. 3 is good. 1 is maybe they're past their useful life or so. We looked at things like, do you have diversity of components in the parks? In other words, if you have one park and you have all horseshoe pits, it really isn't the same as a park that will meet multiple needs. So we learned a lot about different things within the parks. The system, we believe, could really use a signature park, someplace that people could really focus on, really wanting to come and have lots of special events and things like that. You've got some very, very nice parks. Trailheads, look great. There's some nuts and bolts built into our observations, of course, like playgrounds and such. So then we mapped the location using GIS technology so that the district would have an inventory moving forward. If there was a natural disaster or something, now they for sure have a very good quality documented inventory of what's in the parks and how those different components work. Again, each component, like in this case, this example, there's a basketball court. Each of these 5 components for us are reasons that people would go to a park. And each of those scored a 2. And then the park overall received a score. So when we looked at just neighborhood parks, here's a list of the parks and their scores. We realized that an average is about 24. And so some of the parks are average or above, and there's some parks that are not. This analysis works really well for developed parks and community parks and special use parks, not so much for natural areas, because natural areas by definition, you don't necessarily want to put components and things that you'd use. So we looked to see what is the walkable access. Again, looking at that experience for district residents, how able are people to leave their house in 10 minutes or a quarter of a mile? How well can they walk to a neighborhood park? Like some folks will look at just having the green area. What we wanted was to say, we want you to be able to do something when you get to that area. So we looked and we set a target that said, if you had 3 components in a trailhead, or 4 components, meaning you had a ball field and a loop walk, and you had different areas you could play, then they would meet that standard. You can see in terms of the population, 32% have that opportunity to go within a 10-minute walk. There's an additional 45% of the community that can walk. They might not have all of that target met, but there are outdoor recreation opportunities in their neighborhood or community parks. There's 23% of the population that cannot walk within a 10-minute walk. Now, it doesn't mean that there isn't a park within that 10 minutes, but if there's a barrier like a road or a railroad or something, just to point out, what we also learned was when we looked at those areas that have the 32% service, the more likely people have a park that meets that standard. The higher their household income, the less their diversity, and the less their crime index showed. So we dove in to see, where those numbers lie, so that as the district moves toward prioritizing where are we going to improve next, they now have a map that'll say, this is the area that we know if we make these changes to this park, we're going to affect X number of people based on their household income, based on diversity, based on crime, kind of level out that playing field. So the good news is that folks have drivable access within the city, meaning within the urban growth boundary, which means that virtually all, 99%, if you can get across some of those barriers, you have that park within that quarter mile from your home that has that standard of service. What we use is what we call the 880 rule. It's not scientific, but we think it works well. If you wouldn't trust your 8-year-old to go across the street on their own, or your 80-year-old parent to go across the street on their own, then there's a barrier that's in between there. And that's what we looked at. So we tried to break those barriers out as best as we could in order to make those determinations. So the conclusion, the good news is, there's a lot of access for community members, and there is room there when the district decides to either prioritize removing some of those barriers or increasing or infilling different opportunities in the parks. There's opportunity to increase that number significantly. So then we moved from there to look to say, what are some of those other measures, and how does the district measure up to other agencies across the state? And these happen to be other agencies that we have used what we call our GRASP technology with, which is the measuring of each of the components in the parks. We've done these, the planning efforts for Tualatin Hills and North Clackamas, Canby, Wilsonville, and such. And so you can see the pink means they're just a little bit below, and the green, they're just a little bit ahead. Basically, if you look at some of these areas, it's interesting information, and I would never suggest that that planning decisions be made solely on this, but it does give you kind of an idea that says, okay, if we have say, I'll just pick one out, people per park, it's 1,465. And that's the highest of this. It means that for population, there's more people that may be using those parks. So there's a density of use concern or issue. Is that a big number? Maybe not, but again, the average is 1,000 people per park across those different elements. So again, at the end of the day, when setting priorities over the next 10 years, these are another tool that can be used. So again, we started with the project timeline in January, and it is now November or just about December. And you can see November, we were needing to do our findings opportunity to the community, to present to you an update, to present to the city of Springfield an update, and again to the community. And we're right on track with that. And if anything else, we're probably a little bit ahead in the project. We expect a draft coming in the January timeframe. And by the time the community has opportunity to review and tell us if we got things right or wrong and what we need to go back to the drawing board on, we expect that probably by May and especially by June, we'll be ready to adopt, or we will have adopted this plan. So the next steps are to continue to review the findings. And in fact, the typical type of review that's ongoing right now is we're looking at what were all those things? What was in that bucket from 2012? What did the district accomplish? What did they put on, what maybe are there things that are still out there underway? And what should we include in the new plan going forward? So we're doing those kind of reviews right now. We expect then next step is to begin to formulate draft recommendations, and expect again to come back to you in one way or another to provide you the draft plan for comment, and then final plan again in June. So I thank you for your time. I hope I haven't gone too far over time, but if there are questions, we'd be happy to try to answer them.
Well, I'll tell you, from my preference, you keep going because this is fascinating, and the analysis is brilliant. And whoever hired this guy, good job.
Well, thank you.
Very good. Then I'll turn to the board to see if you develop any questions, unless Jason, you have anything you'd like to add at this point? And I'm sorry, I meant Jared. Jared, do you have anything like?
Nothing from me. No, we're happy to answer any questions from the board.
Very good. Then I'll look to the board for questions by Commissioner Buck, followed by Vice Chair Trieger.
Thank you, Chair. I had a few questions about those that service Willamette Lane that may not live in Springfield. My family is a huge fan of going to Willamette Lane, and we do not live within a city limit. We're in unincorporated Lane County, and I know that there's got to be a good number of folks that don't live in the city, but utilize it. Either they're not in a city like myself, or for example, the city of Eugene's parks and pools are full. And so they may go a little bit further to Springfield. I don't know if that's something that you capture in this kind of context.
In the survey, I don't know if we can flip back to I think it's the second or third slide. It has a map. In the survey, we did ask respondents to tell us which one of those colored areas they live in. And if they didn't live in one, to tell us, are you, in a sense, a non-resident of the district. So we do have the opportunity to break that data out and to be able to ensure that there's a number of other users' information that is still captured. Often economic development or tourist questions come in with those kind of questions as well. What about people who are just visiting, and what impact do they have? What are their needs as well? I don't know. Christina, is there anything else that you'd want to? I'm looking back. They know more of the policy with the district. Typically, people who are not in district may be asked to pay a little more or so.
Yeah, and as a planning document, we use our district boundary, which is essentially the city of Springfield with a slight expansion, or the urban growth boundary. And as our planning boundary, and those are the folks who are contributing to our park district. And so that's what this plan is based off of, the feedback primarily of those users. But we do, as Jeff said, have information coming from other folks and are paying attention to those kind of high demand, high use facilities that we have.
Well, I would just say, you know, as a fan of Willamette Lane, we thoroughly enjoy going there. And, you know, because we're not in the city, we go both to Eugene Rec and Willamette Lane Rec, depending on what's available at what time. But I imagine there's good data there that might be very interesting to you if you have it, even though this is clearly the bulk of your work and the bulk of the people that come. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Buck. Vice Chair Trigger.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. And I just have a couple of comments and questions. I loved the question about welcomeness. We've been talking a lot here at Lane County about building cultures of belonging and and that's how I heard that question is, do people feel like they belong? So congratulations. To me, in many ways, that's one of the most significant findings, is that people really do feel like it's their asset, it's their park. So that's lovely. I had a question about the disability, the slide of different types of disability. I assume that was self-reported on the surveys. Is that how you arrived at those numbers?
We actually have it from two different areas. We have the self-reporting in the survey, but the information you saw there was from the demographic study. So those are actually that come out of the census information originally, and then it gets Esri and some other sources do some things with it. But the survey data was just a little bit different. It's like 3% more individuals with disabilities than what we saw in the demographics. We compared intentionally so we could be pretty sure that we've captured the district desires and needs.
Great, thank you. And then the two other pieces, I'm curious, there was one comment around barriers to access or issues, and high fees was mentioned. And your parks, there's no fee for parking or accessing parks. So I assume that's about entry to use facilities like the pool or signing up for classes, or what is, am I right that there's no?
Yeah, the fees and charges would be primarily for participation in activities. There's a lot of communities that do use parking lots as opportunities to fund things like boat launches. Up at Forest Park in the Portland area, those dollars all for parking all go to pay for the park maintenance, things like that. I don't believe there are any. No, there aren't any.
Quick. Hello again. We actually have been using for over a decade a cost recovery methodology that the more public, accessible, like just a park that's open, we don't charge a fee, we wouldn't charge a fee. The more individualized that activity is, that's how we set our costs appropriately.
Great, thank you. That helped. That was exactly what I was thinking. And also when I was looking at the services people wanted, they were sort of niche. You don't care about a dog off leash park if you don't have a dog, for example, right? So you already reduce your sample size of who's going to flag that. Great, thank you. That's helpful. And then the last thing that in some ways I'm most interested in, when you identified folks that didn't have access to walkable access to a park or service, and you mentioned that might be because of a physical barrier, they can't, it's too busy of a street. It's not just proximity.
Right.
And so I'm just curious what you're learning from that, and then what some of those connections and opportunities are to other organizations and entities and municipalities to address some of those concerns, because I would imagine most of those are out of your control. It's actually other entities or municipalities or just facts of the landscape that create those barriers.
Yeah, go ahead.
I can jump in on this one. So we are collaborating with the City of Springfield a lot, obviously, and looking at the transportation planners are kind of participating in this project and providing feedback about what they already have in the works as far as plans. And then we're going to try to coordinate on some pedestrian improvements that could happen along their corridors. And also trying to reach out to Safe Routes to School a little bit too and see what they have in progress. And the Bike and Pedestrian Committee in Springfield has also been working with us on it. So we're kind of at the phase now where we're identifying those issues. And then this next part is going to be figuring out what we can do about it. So
Great.
that will be coming.
Thank you.
We've been able to map the number of people that live in very small percentage areas. So we can say that if there is a barrier in this particular park, however, if we do X, Y, and Z to this particular park in terms of infill, maybe we add some things to it, that percentage can grow, and those folks then would have that opportunity, and that barrier in a sense goes away. There are a lot of different ways in addition to, or in a rather than build bridges and figure out ways to go move people in different ways. There's a lot of ways we can help to address that within the park system.
Thank you so much. Appreciate the presentation and congratulations. Great.
Thank you, Vice Chair Trigger. Commissioner Bozievich.
Thank you. I don't have a lot of questions about the plan, and I think it's a great piece of work. Probably the only thing I want to maybe insert here is just to mention some past work and thoughts about expanding the district basically to cover the entire county, and also to encompass the River Road Parks District. I've, in the past been an advocate of finding some way to assist the River Road Park District in maintaining its financial viability. And one of the issues we have is a small district that's facing a large, deferred maintenance issues and capital costs that its tax base continues to dwindle with annexations. So there's just want to put a thought in there as we think about the future of parks in Lane County. There may be a day where we think about a unified park and rec district that covers the entire county of some kind. And I think those discussions need to continue to happen at staff levels. I don't think it's something that's ripe for the next year or so, but just don't want to lose sight of that. I grew up in an area that was covered by the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission, which encompasses 2 entire counties in the state of Maryland. And that was and has been one of the leaders in the nation in park and rec services. And its ability to be that way was because of the broad tax base available and the ability to have a large enough staff to do all the necessary planning and management of those facilities. It's very difficult for small towns or small districts to execute at the level that Willamette Lane is currently executing at. So just want to throw that thought out there. And if you have any comments about that, feel free to address it.
That is I don't know if that's a softball or a golf shot to the ward of the head, but that's a question that does come up from time to time. But any response to that?
I could say is, Willamette Lane was the first special park district in the state of Oregon. We take a lot of pride in that and our service to the Springfield community. However, this has been talked about, even prior to me becoming the executive director / superintendent, and one that we will continue to speak about with our board. I know that during the United Front delegates that we go through, and we have these types of conversations. So it's one that's ongoing. I don't want to make it seem like we're nearing anything, but I think it would be wise, as I congratulated the county park system before, a strong park system anywhere only helps and strengthens all of us together, and maybe potentially just finding ways that we can continue to support each other. We will continue those conversations.
Thank you, Ms. Wargo. Good response. Excellent. Vice Chair Trigger?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that. Also, sort of sidebar, do I detect Philadelphia in there? Excellent. Germantown, Mount Airy represent. Okay. I just wanted to appreciate Commissioner Bozovich actually bringing that concept up and just say to this group and on the record, if those are conversations that we want to have, I'd be very interested to participate in those, to explore it, not with a decision going into it to say, how are we going to do this, but just exploratory and enter into what would that look like. And appreciate your acknowledgement of the Parks Bond. I know those of us here were very actively working in support of that. And so we're at an important moment in timing, right? Those kind of conversations cannot be rushed, should not be rushed. They take time. And so we're in that 5-year window now with that levy. Could be a really good time to start having those conversations, just to explore what the possibilities are, what the models are in other areas, what a parks region could look like, if not the entire county. So thanks for bringing that up.
All right. And all I have are words of praise, really. 50 years ago, my wife and I moved to Springfield and East Springfield, and began enjoying very well developed parks 50 years ago in Springfield, Willamette Lane. And the fact that you continue to search for excellence, continue to search for different ways to make sure that your customers are satisfied with the services that you do, that is a true hallmark of any great organization. I'm going to look at you, Mr. Walker. You're the director of the organization, so you're the person I'm looking at right now. The superb job that Willamette Lane has done in adapting to both technological advances as well as land acquisition to make certain that your geographic presentation really stretches from one end of the metro area, the urban growth boundary, to the other. Literally, I mean, you encompass the border of the urban growth boundary, and inside of the urban growth boundary, you have stuff for everybody, whether it's an afternoon in the park. And the one thing I'm curious about is the fact that you don't feel that you have a signature park. And I differ a little bit. I think you have a handful of signature parks, quite frankly. It's just so you don't have an Alton Baker Park, that encompasses 6 miles of the riverfront. But that being said, you do fulfill all of the needs across the board. And I've been very, very satisfied. I don't live in Springfield anymore. I live in the opposite end of the metro area. Still take our family, our grandchildren to your parks because your parks are excellent. Because the fees are appropriate to the services being provided. And in most cases, there's no fee. You get to go there, you get to swing on the swings, you get to just enjoy the beautiful landscaping. And I could go on with praises on and on and on. I do work closely with the River Roads Park District. It is currently inside of my county commission district. And the question that people often have is, well, why can't River Roads Park District be more like Willamette Lane? Well, there are a host of reasons. One thing, it's like, how do you develop the lawns like they have at Hyde Park? Well, you start about 250 years ago. With Willamette, decisions were made at the outset that allowed you to develop to the very well organized park system you have. And you compare yourselves with Tualatin, compare yourselves with Canby and North Clackamas. Very wonderful park systems, but I'll put yours up against any one of them in terms of amenities, services provided, but most prominently, something that Vice Chair Trigger touched on, customer satisfaction. Do I feel welcome in the park? 4.3, any retailer would love to have that, that is so outstanding. With that, I could go on all day about it. I'd like to talk about the individual parks that I've gone to. I'd like to talk about hanging out in your parks and how your parks complement and overlap Lane County parks, quite literally in some cases. And the work that we've done together, whether or not our park districts 100 years from now join some way, in the meantime, we are coordinated. So with that, any further response? I didn't ask any questions, but I did provide my personal biased input regarding how I love your parks.
I appreciate the input, and we're going to ensure that we keep the comments that you've made in your questions in line as we develop the recommendations.
And I know I see I'm looking down your staff listing, and I see some very park-oriented names. I see a Wygant on here, for instance. There you are. And the fact that I know that you do, when we talk about Mr. Wagon, who was a longtime director of River Road Parks, about the coordination, the help that you've offered River Road Parks, which suffers from a horrible shrinking tax base. You don't have that. You never will have that. They don't, because of the origins of that type of park district. So I think it's good to see Mr. Wagon, the younger. It's good to see you involved with the park still. It must be in your blood. It must be your DNA. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Mokrajewski, thank you very much for this presentation today, and thank you all for being here. We look forward to enjoying your parks as early as, Saturday. See you then. We'll take a moment for the room to clear. And I'll just take a quick step back to you, Mr. Mokrajewski. Any further announcements that, before we move into executive session?
Nope, nothing further.
Very well, then we have no further regular business this morning. We do have a need for executive session this morning. At the sound of my gavel, we will recess the Board of County Commissioners and enter into executive session. We will return in regular session in Harris Hall at 1:30 today. The Board of County Commissioners will meet in executive session to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to carry on labor negotiations and to consult with legal counsel concerning legal rights and duties regarding current litigation or litigation likely to be filed. This executive session is held pursuant to ORS 162.6602D and H, which allow the Board of Commissioners to meet in executive session for the purposes listed. Representatives of the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. All other members of the audience are asked to leave the room. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on any of the deliberations during the executive session, except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. No decision may be made in executive session. We reserve the right to come back into public session should the need arise. And as I mentioned, we will return in regular session in Harris Hall at 1:30. Subsequent to my gavel, let us meet in executive session at 5 minutes till 11 in our private offices.